Flight attendant. Tears up black boy's ticket, unaware. His mother owns the entire airline. She ripped his boarding pass right in front of him, smirking with satisfaction. Minutes later, she found herself packing up her locker as the owner of Sky Globe. Airlines watched in silence. The gleaming terminal of San Francisco International Airport buzzed with the typical morning rush. Travelers wheeling suitcases across polished floors, the aroma of overpriced coffee wafting through the air, announcement, chimes punctuating the constant hum of conversation. Gate C-12 was particularly busy as Sky Globe Airline's premier flight to Tokyo prepared for boarding. 12-year-old Elijah Morgan stood in line, clutching his boarding pass with nervous excitement. This would be his first international flight, alone, a journey to meet his mother who was wrapping up business in Japan. He had prepared meticulously, a passport secured in a neck pouch just as his parents had taught him, a backpack containing his tablet, headphones, and the Japanese language guide he'd been studying for weeks. The line inched forward. Elijah observed. The flight attendant at the gate, a woman with platinum blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her crisp navy uniform adorned with a silver pin, indicating 15 years of service. Her name tag read, Patricia Winters. She processed each traveler with mechanical efficiency, barely looking up as she scanned boarding passes. When the businessman in front of Elijah moved forward, the boy took a deep breath and stepped up to the counter. Immediately, something changed in Patricia's demeanor. Her eyes narrowed slightly, her practiced smile faltering as she looked down at him. "Ticket," she said flatly, extending her hand. Elijah handed over his boarding pass. "I'm traveling. To meet my mom in Tokyo. I have my unaccompanied minor form, too." Patricia's eyes flicked from the boarding pass to Elijah's face, then back to the pass. First class. Her eyebrows raised fractionally. "This can't be right," she muttered. Louder, she asked, "Where are your parents? Who purchased this ticket?" "My mom did. She's already in Tokyo and she bought you a first-class ticket?" Patricia interrupted, skepticism lacing her voice. "These seats are over $4,000. People behind Elijah started to shift impatiently. The boy's cheeks burned, but he maintained his composure. Another thing his mother had emphasized. Always stay calm, especially when others aren't. "Yes, ma'am, I have all my documentation," he replied, reaching for the folder in his backpack containing his passport and the airline's unaccompanied minor forms. But Patricia wasn't interested in documentation. She had already made up her mind. With deliberate slowness, she placed his boarding pass on the counter and did the unthinkable. She tore it in half. "Wrong flight," she said with a dismissive sneer. "These premium seats are reserved for our priority customers." The terminal seemed to freeze around Elijah. A cold wave of shock washed over him as he stared at his destroyed boarding pass. Behind him, he heard murmurs of confusion from other passengers. "But," Elijah started, his voice smaller than he intended. "You can go to customer service and—" "Sort this out," Patricia cut him off, already looking past him to the next passenger. "Next!" Elijah didn't move. This couldn't be happening. His mother had personally arranged everything. "I said next," Patricia repeated, her voice hardening. When Elijah still didn't move, she pressed a button under her desk. "Security, we have a situation at gate C-12. That was when Elijah pulled out his phone with trembling hands and pressed the contact labeled Mom. Amara Morgan was not having the morning she had planned. As founder and CEO of Sky Globe Airlines, she had expected to spend her final day in Tokyo, closing a landmark partnership with Japan's largest airline conglomerate, before flying home tomorrow. Instead, she found herself on an urgent video call with her executive team, addressing an unexpected regulatory challenge that threatened to delay the deal. Her hotel suite had been transformed into a command center. Laptops open on every surface. Documents spread across the king-sized bed. Her most trusted advisors dialed in from 3 different continents. At 42, Amara had built Skyglobe from a regional carrier into the 5th largest airline in the United States through a combination of strategic genius, relentless work ethic, and an unwavering commitment to creating a different kind of airline, one where both passengers and employees were treated with genuine respect. When her phone lit up with Elijah's name, she nearly declined the call out of habit. Her son knew she was in critical negotiations. But something, intuition, perhaps, made her excuse herself from the meeting and step onto the balcony overlooking Tokyo's skyline. Elijah? Is everything okay? The moment she heard his voice, she knew something was wrong. As he explained what had happened, Amara's expression transformed from concern to focused fury. Her son, her brilliant, sensitive boy who had been so excited for this trip, was being humiliated for no reason other than the assumptions made about a young black child traveling in first class. "Put her on the phone," Amara instructed, her voice deadly calm. "She called security, Mom," Elijah whispered. Amara checked her watch. She made a swift decision. "Listen to me carefully, Elijah. Stay exactly where you are. Don't argue with anyone, but don't move from that spot. I'm calling Daniel right now. He's at the airport already for the board meeting. He'll be there in 5 minutes. Daniel Chen, Skyglobe's chief operating officer, and Amara's right hand for the past decade, had been scheduled to fly to Tokyo that evening for the signing ceremony. Amara ended the call with Elijah and immediately dialed Daniel. "Cancel your flight. We have a situation at gate C12, she explained rapidly. "Patricia Winters just tore up Elijah's boarding pass and called security on him. I need you there now, to..." His credit, Daniel didn't waste time with questions. "On my way. 5 minutes." Amara then made a second call to Skyglobe's head of security, authorizing him to access all CCTV footage from gate C12 immediately. Her third call was to her executive assistant to arrange for the company jet to be ready in 30 minutes. She would be flying back to San Francisco immediately. The Tokyo deal would have to wait. Some things were more important than business at Hiwai. Gate C12, 2 security officers had approached Elijah, who remained perfectly still, his phone clutched in his hand. Around him, passengers watched uncomfortably, a few filming discreetly with their phones. "What seems to be the problem?" one of the officers asked Patricia. "This boy is attempting to board with a fraudulent ticket," she stated firmly. When asked to step aside, he refused. The security officer turned to Elijah. "Son, do you have identification?" Elijah nodded, reaching slowly for his passport pouch. "My name is Elijah Morgan. My boarding pass was torn up by the flight attendant. I was told it wasn't my flight, but my mother booked it for me." Patricia rolled her eyes dramatically. "He claims to be in first class. Clearly, there's been a mistake." The officer examined Elijah's passport. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps. But before he could respond, a commanding voice cut through the tension. "What exactly is happening here?" Daniel Chen approached the gate, his presence immediately shifting the dynamic. At 6'2" with an athletic build accentuated by an impeccably tailored suit, he carried the natural authority of someone accustomed to being in charge. "Mr. Chen." Patricia's demeanor instantly changed, a nervous smile replacing her previous disdain. "I didn't expect to see you here today." "Evidently not," Daniel replied coolly. He turned to Elijah and placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "Are you all right, Elijah?" "Yes, Uncle Daniel," Elijah replied, relief washing over his features. The eye, Security officers exchanged glances, sensing the situation had just become much more complicated. Patricia's smile faltered, confusion creeping into her expression. "You know this child?" she asked. Daniel fixed her with an icy stare. "This child is Elijah Morgan, son of Amara Morgan, the founder and CEO of SkyGlobe Airlines, your employer and mine." He turned to the security officers. "Thank you for your assistance, gentlemen. This matter will now be handled internally." The color drained from Patricia's face as the implications hit her. Her eyes darted between Daniel and Elijah, seeing for the first time the resemblance to the woman whose portrait hung in the company headquarters lobby. "I had no idea," she began. "That much is abundantly clear," Daniel cut her off. "What is less clear is why you felt entitled to tear up a valid boarding pass and call security on a 12-year-old unaccompanied minor who was following every procedure correctly." The gathered passengers were now openly watching, many with phones raised. Patricia seemed to shrink under the collective gaze, her previously commanding presence collapsing under the weight of her mistake. "There must have been a misunderstanding," she stammered. "The system didn't flag him as a VIP passenger." "Because Ms. Morgan specifically instructed that her son be treated like any other unaccompanied minor," Daniel replied. "The question is, why any other unaccompanied minor with a valid first-class ticket would be treated this way?" Daniel turned to a second gate agent who had been watching the scene unfold. "Please print a new boarding pass for Mr. Morgan immediately and ensure he's personally escorted to his seat." To Elijah, he added, "Your mother will be arriving in San Francisco by the time you land in Tokyo. She's cutting her trip short." As the replacement boarding pass was being printed, Daniel took Patricia aside. Their conversation was brief and one-sided. When they separated, Patricia woodenly gathered her belongings from behind the counter, unpinned her silver service pin, and placed it beside the computer terminal. Without another word, she walked away from Gate C-12, her career at SkyGlobe Airlines. Over after 15 years. 30 minutes later, Elijah was settled in his first-class pod, the cabin crew now falling over themselves to ensure his comfort. The flight attendant serving his section had personally apologized for her colleague's behavior, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and genuine regret. "Your mother is an inspiration," she told him quietly, as she helped him with his seatbelt. "When she took over, everything changed for the better. We're all mortified about what happened today." Elijah nodded, still processing the morning's events. He was troubled not by Patricia's assumption that he didn't belong in first class. This wasn't the first time he had encountered such prejudice, but by how quickly power had made her cruel. And the plane began its taxi to the runway. Elijah's phone pinged with one final message before he would need to switch to airplane mode. From Mom. "I love you so much. I'm sorry this happened. We'll talk when you land. And Elijah, none of this was your fault. Never forget that." 14 hours later, a visibly exhausted Amara Morgan stood waiting at the international arrivals gate at Haneda Airport in Tokyo. Around her, SkyGlobe employees hovered at a respectful distance, their presence ensuring privacy in the public space. Despite having been in flight for over 13 hours, she had changed into a fresh suit and applied just enough makeup to mask her fatigue. When Elijah emerged from customs, Amara broke protocol. Instead of the restrained affection she typically displayed in professional settings, she rushed forward and enveloped her son in a fierce hug. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into his hair. "It's okay, Mom," Elijah replied, though they both knew it wasn't. Back at the hotel, after Elijah had showered and changed, they sat across from each other at the dining table in Amara's suite. Room service had delivered a feast of Japanese comfort. Foods, ramen, gyoza, and mochi ice cream, but neither had much appetite. Tell me everything, Amara said. From the beginning. Elijah recounted the incident in detail, his composure remarkable for a child his age. Amara listened without interruption, her expression revealing little of the emotions churning beneath the surface. When he finished, she reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm sorry this happened to you," she said, "but I'm incredibly proud of how you handled it." "Is she really fired?" Elijah asked. Amara nodded. "Patricia Winters no longer works for Sky Globe. Her actions violated our most fundamental company policies, not to mention basic human decency." Elijah frowned slightly. "She didn't know who I was." "And that's precisely the problem," Amara replied. "She treated you poorly because she made assumptions based on what she saw. A young black boy traveling alone. Whether you were my son or any other child, that behavior is unacceptable." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "This is something I've tried to build into the company from the beginning, Elijah. Dignity isn't something that should be reserved for people with the right connections or the right appearance. It's a fundamental right." "But what about her?" 15 years and now she has nothing," Elijah persisted. Amara studied her son, reminded again of his natural empathy, a quality she sometimes worried might make life harder for him in a world that often rewarded hardness. "Actions have consequences," she said gently. "Ms. Winters will receive her legally entitled severance and benefits, but Sky Globe can't employ someone who believes it's acceptable to humiliate a child, any child, in front of dozens of witnesses." Elijah nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation. They ate in companionable silence for a while before he asked, "What happens next?" "Well," Amara said, "there are a few things. First, Sky Globe will be implementing additional training across all customer-facing staff specifically addressing unconscious bias. Second, we're reviewing our unaccompanied minor procedures to ensure this never happens again." She hesitated before continuing. "And there's something else. The incident was filmed by several passengers. It's already circulating online." Elijah groaned. "So I'm viral now? Not you specifically. Your face isn't clearly visible in the videos. But yes, the incident has gained attention. Sky Globe's public response will be released tomorrow. We're not hiding from this, but we're also not exploiting it." What Amara didn't tell Elijah was that the company's response had been drafted during her flight to Tokyo, with input from their diversity and inclusion team, legal department, and public relations. The statement acknowledged the incident, confirmed that the employee had been terminated, and outlined concrete steps the airline was taking to address the underlying issues. It was measured, responsible, and completely devoid of the raw fury Amara had felt watching the security footage of her son being humiliated. The following days brought a whirlwind of activity. As expected, the videos spread rapidly across social media platforms, accompanied by hashtags like Flying While Black and SARS Sky Globe Shame. Patricia Winters gave an interview to a sympathetic news outlet, claiming she had been made a scapegoat and denying any racial motivation for her actions. Her 15 years of service, she insisted, spoke for themselves. But the security footage, which Sky Globe released with Elijah's face blurred, told a different story. The contrast between her treatment of Elijah and the white passengers before and after him was stark and undeniable. Public opinion solidified against her, particularly when former colleagues came forward with stories of similar incidents that had gone unreported. Amara remained in Tokyo with Elijah for the planned week, splitting her time between finalizing the Japanese partnership and creating memories with her son. They visited temples, navigated bustling markets, and ate at tiny restaurants where the chefs treated the creation of ramen as an art form. If Elijah noticed his mother's phone buzzing constantly with crisis management calls, he didn't mention it. On their final evening in Tokyo, they stood on the observation deck of Tokyo Skytree, gazing out at the endless sea of lights stretching to the horizon. Elijah, who had been quieter than usual throughout the day, finally spoke. "Mom, why did you start an airline?" The question caught Amara off guard. "That's a big question. The short answer is that I saw an opportunity in the market and had ideas about how air travel could be improved." Elijah turned to face her. "No, I mean the real reason, the one you don't tell journalists." Amara smiled at her perceptive son. "You remember the story about how your grandmother and I were separated during a connection in Dallas?" Elijah nodded. "It was family lore, how 16-year-old Amara and her mother had been bumped from an overbooked flight, despite having confirmed tickets, causing them to miss a funeral. The airline had been indifferent to their plight, offering nothing but vouchers for future travel. What I don't usually tell people," Amara continued, "is how they treated us. The condescension, the dismissal, the clear message that people who looked like us weren't valued customers." She paused, gazing out at the city lights. "I decided then that someday I'd create an airline where that couldn't happen, where dignity wasn't a premium service. But it still happened," Elijah said softly. "Even at your airline." Amara put her arm around her son's shoulders. "Yes, it did. And that means we still have work to do. Systems don't change overnight, Elijah. They change through persistent effort, through refusing to accept the status quo, through holding people accountable when they fall short of our values." "Is that why you're not suing her, Patricia?" Amara raised an eyebrow. "How did you know we weren't pursuing legal action?" Elijah shrugged. "The internet. People are saying you should. And what do you think?" Elijah considered the question carefully. "I think she already lost what mattered to her, her job and reputation. More punishment wouldn't help her understand why she was wrong." Amara felt a surge of pride. "That's remarkably mature thinking." "Besides," Elijah added with a hint of his usual humor, "it would mean talking about it even more, and I'd rather just be a normal kid who isn't known as Airline Incident Boy for the rest of middle school." Amara laughed, relieved to see a glimpse of his resilient spirit returning. "Fair enough." 3 months later, Amara sat in her San Francisco office reviewing the quarterly Diversity and Inclusion Report. The incident with Elijah had triggered a company-wide reassessment of training and procedures, resulting in measurable improvements in customer satisfaction across all demographic groups. The social media storm had eventually subsided, though the case was now included in business school curricula as a study in crisis management and corporate responsibility. A knock at her door interrupted her reading. Her assistant entered, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Ms. Morgan, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's been waiting in the lobby for 3 hours." "Who is it?" Amara asked, already suspecting the answer. "Patricia Winters." Amara closed the report and removed her reading glasses. "Send her in." The woman who entered bore little resemblance to the polished flight attendant from the security footage. Patricia Winters had lost weight, and her previously immaculate blonde hair was now pulled back in a simple ponytail. She stood just inside the doorway, clutching a leather portfolio like a shield. "Ms. Winters," Amara acknowledged, neither rising nor offering her hand. "What can I do for you?" Patricia swallowed visibly. "I came to apologize. Not for my job. That ship has sailed. But to your son, and to you." "Elijah isn't here." "I know. I thought perhaps you might pass along my message." Patricia shifted her weight nervously. I've spent these months reflecting on what happened, on what I did. Amara gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Patricia perched on the edge of the seat, still clutching her portfolio. After the incident, I was angry. I blamed everyone but myself. But eventually, I had to face the truth about my actions and the assumptions behind them. And what truth is that? Amara asked, her voice neutral. That I saw your son and made immediate judgments based on his appearance. That I couldn't reconcile his youth and his race with the first-class ticket he held. Patricia met Amara's gaze, directly for the first time. I've been in therapy working to understand my biases. It doesn't excuse what I did, but I want you to know I'm trying to change. Amara studied the woman across from her, looking for signs of insincerity. Finding none, she asked, Why now? Why come here after 3 months? Patricia opened her portfolio and removed a sheet of paper, placing it on the desk between them. It was a job offer from a regional airline. I've been offered a position in their training department, focusing on customer service protocols. Before I accepted, I needed to make things right, or at least try to. Amara scanned the offer letter, noting that the position paid significantly less than Patricia's former role at Sky Globe. They know about the incident? Patricia nodded. It was a condition of my application that I disclose everything. Their CEO believes my experience makes me uniquely qualified to help prevent similar situations. An unexpected sense of respect flickered through Amara. It would have been easier for Patricia to leave the industry entirely, to escape the shadow of her mistake. Instead, she was choosing to face it directly, to transform her failure into something constructive. I'll tell Elijah you came, Amara said finally. That's all I can promise. Thank you. That's more than I expected. Patricia stood to leave, then hesitated. Your son showed remarkable composure that day. Far more than I did. You should be proud. I am, Amara replied simply. After Patricia left, Amara remained at her desk, contemplating their conversation. The easy path would be to dismiss the apology, to maintain the righteous anger that had fueled company-wide reforms. But easy paths rarely led to meaningful change. That evening, as she and Elijah prepared dinner together in their hillside home overlooking the bay, Amara recounted Patricia's visit. She watched her son carefully as he absorbed the information, his expressive face revealing his thoughts almost in real time. Do you think she meant it? He asked eventually, returning to the carrots he was chopping. I do, Amara replied. People rarely put themselves in uncomfortable positions unless they're sincere. Elijah considered this. Good. I didn't want her to lose everything forever. That's generous of you. He shrugged. Not really. It's just... He paused, searching for the right words. If she stays stuck as the villain in this story, then nothing really changes. But if she can learn and help others learn, then maybe something good comes from what happened. Amara looked at her son, this thoughtful, compassionate young man, who somehow maintained his faith in people's capacity for growth despite evidence to the contrary, and felt a profound appreciation for the person he was becoming. When did you get so wise? She asked, only half joking. Elijah grinned, a flash of his more carefree self returning. Probably from all those first-class flights. The extra leg room gives you room to think. Amara laughed, grateful for his resilience, for his ability to find humor even in difficult situations. As they continued preparing dinner, She reflected on the unexpected outcomes of that painful day at Gate C12, a company-wide reckoning, a woman forced to confront her prejudices, and her son stepping more confidently into his understanding of a complex world. None of it erased what had happened. But perhaps, Samara thought, watching Elijah expertly flip vegetables in the wok, this was how progress actually worked. Not in grand gestures or perfect solutions, but in the messy, imperfect process of humans struggling to do better than they had before.